Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of the Versus Stars podcast third season. How my loyal listeners? Thank you for continued support. This is an amazing episode because Dan Waters returns to the mothership to discuss Destro from Image Comics. Now come aboard as we go traversing the stars.
Hi, Mr. Waters. Thank you for coming back to the Traverse the Stars podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again.
It's so my pleasure, always a pleasure to talk with you. So the cool thing is, like, now you're writing Destro for Image Comics, and I remember Destro
Mhm.
from GI Joe from when I was a kid. I had one of his the golden headed Destro toy. So how familiar were you with the property prior to writing the series?
Not is the
Not
truth of it. Yeah, growing up in the UK, it was not something we sort of had, at least like my generation. Um, so it was something I came to quite fresh with this project. But I was sort of approached it as something where it's a reinvention. Not trying to reinvent the wheel with it, but trying to sort of do this new version of it. And that was very appealing to me. And the character's great. Like, the G.I. Joe characters, once I started looking into it, they all have these very strange origins that are not quite what you expect. Um, so yeah, being able to sort of, tell a five-issue story about a international gun smuggler is yeah, a lot of fun.
so kind of it's interesting to hear your perspective. So obviously in the States, GI Joe was a huge franchise in the '80s and the '90s. Not as much now, but back basically '80s and '90s. When you were kind of discovering them for the first time, what was the aspect of them that you found most interesting or most surprising that you thought to yourself that maybe didn't quite, or either went beyond your expectations, or strangely kind of like was askew from your expectations?
I don't know if I had any expectations at all, really. I think like the only exposure to it I might have had was when we had Action Man when I was a kid, which was the sort of British version, which was it was Action Force and then Action Man by the time I was a kid, and it kind of got further and further away from GI Joe and a little bit more James Bondy each time, I think. So it was something that was coming to like really fresh. I had never seen these characters before, like, or I'd seen them peripherally probably, but not dove into them. So that there's decades of lore and history and sort of like development and stuff. And so coming, like, there's sometimes like I think there's a real advantage of coming to that fresh because you're seeing it from the outside and you're seeing like, what is sort of strange about it, which it's easy to take for granted when you've sort of like grown up with the things. Um, so yeah, I guess the fact that there's um more sort of particularly for something that was, a Saturday morning cartoon in the 80s, I was surprised to sort of see that these characters do have these kind of complex political structures. Like, I love the fact that Destro is kind of this third pillar where you've got sort of Joe versus Cobra, but Destro is, very much in the Cobra camp, but he's also got his own agenda. He's got his own like thing going on. He's not exactly loyal.
Now, the other thing interesting about GI Joe, for those who love the comic books, comic books have been around for a long time. Marvel had a huge run in the '80s. Obviously, went to IDW for a little while. Now they're back, and Marvel kind of has the legend. If it was Marvel, they call it like the legendary numbering. It's like 300 and something instead of like number
Mhm.
two, which is kind of what it is now. And most of these issues were written by Larry Hama over that
Mhm.
of course. I think I don't know if he wrote every issue according to the 300 some issues, but he wrote a huge number of them. So when
He's
you're,
still writing it.
yeah, I mean,
It's still going.
did
It's
he
still
ever
going at
write?
Skybound as well.
Did he miss? I don't know if he. I mean, did he write all 300 issues? I mean, did he have a window in between where someone else was doing it? I can't remember.
I'm not certain. I wouldn't be able to tell you.
So,
But they're continuing the numbering at Skybound as well.
when you're thinking about once again Larry Hammond's massive run, how tightly intertwined is your series with what Larry Hammond's doing and that continuity going back? Who knows how far it is now counting as real continuity for GI Joe?
I mean, it's not. It's a separate thing because this is the Energon universe, so it's a sort of reimagining and uh the sort of Transformers element is there in the universe from the beginning. Um, guess I probably can't say at this point like how much we'll go into that stuff in our book, but it's definitely sort of, our focus is on Destro instead. But it's a sort of ground up thing where these books should be like very accessible. Cobra isn't a thing yet. It's sort of forming in the wake of these sort of revelations over in Josh's Cobra Commander book. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think that was an advantage as well of me coming to the franchise fresh, is that we're very much in at the ground level and able to sort of put our own spin on it and like reimagine some characters, particularly some stuff that's um been a little more peripheral within the franchise, or has sort of had been pushed to the side a bit, and like being able to take those things and reinvent them has definitely been a thing we've been looking to do.
So one interesting thing is, once again, Destro being a arms dealer, to be an arms dealer at a point in time when literal robotic aliens lands on your planet with all the toys and gizmos they have from their, obviously they're a species, a race that can cross huge distances. Obviously they're technologically advanced in a way that we've never seen. What does that mean to an arms dealer like Destro?
I mean, a lot. Well, where we start our book, he doesn't know that the Transformers are on Earth yet, but he very much knows something is going on.
Mm.
He can smell the sort of winds of change, because he also comes from this line of arms dealers. His ancestors have been doing this job since at least the English Civil War. Um, so they've sort of survived and thrived by being able to sort of perceive the shifts that are coming in warfare, and being able to meet the supply demand for that. So Destro, we start the book with Destro very much aware that something is about to change, and that change in the world has been speeding up across the 20th and into the 21st century. So he really wants to get out ahead of it, and that's kind of uh, the thrust of like the book, at least at the beginning.
So you said that Cobra isn't really fully formed yet. So at what part of his gestation is Destro taking place in within the Cobra gestation period of the organization?
I mean, I think it's all kind of being put together. It's a dream at this point, but our book is definitely partly also it's a power struggle between Cobra Commander and Destro. They're kind of feeling each other out at this point, but they both know they kind of need each other for what the future is going to hold.
So I mean, while Cobra doesn't really have a deep maybe ideology, they're definitely an ideological group. I mean, they're basically global terrorists on some level. Um, does How does Destro feel about the ideology of Cobra at all? Does he have any real, beyond the financial benefits? Does he have any ideological benefits in what Cobra could be?
I think he's less interested in the ideology of Cobra than he is in his own. He sees himself very much as still a monolith, and Cobra is something that's currently useful to him. And whether that will change is, again, something we'll explore in the books. I don't want to give too much away, but it's very much he's very much financially driven. He's very cold and sort of brutal on that aspect, but to him, he very much has this like code of honor,
Hmm.
and the money is a sort of way to fuel what he does, and keep it going, and keep this lineage of his family's fortune and their sort of prominence on the world stage. So that's the stuff that really matters to Destro.
Now, maybe this is one of the things that, or is not realistic about GI Joe. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things in this cartoon from the '80s, but still, one of the things that is kind of like not realistic would be, on some level, is that Destro and Cobra Commander could ever live even mildly harmoniously with one another. I mean, because in the cartoon, he's very much his second banana in some way, sort of like almost like a Darth Vader type. That he's second guy, the second one, but it doesn't feel like Destro would ever be happy not being the top. The way you envision Destro, can Destro ever really live on the same planet in some ways as Cobra Commander?
I mean, if it benefits him, I think that's kind of part of the fun of those two characters, and that's part of what makes Cobra interesting is that there is this kind of I don't know if there's ever been at least like an iteration that I've seen where he's not in some way always kind of vying for top dog position.
Mm.
Um, but I think they need. I don't know. Maybe they're a little codependent. Maybe they love each other really.
um, the other thing about Destro is that being a kind of the bad dude, he's an arms dealer. My dog. Anyways, being an arms dealer, is he a difficult protagonist to write? Because he's not heroic in real way. You technically sort of can't have him be the hero of your story in that sense. Does that make him and the way his motivation being not very empathetic for most people? How difficult is he to write as a protagonist of a series?
No, I don't think that's difficult at all. Um, no, I think you absolutely can. I think there's a sort of fallacy that your protagonist has to be likable. They just have to be interesting, and you have to understand them. Like their flaws can be, extreme. But as long as they have humanity, as long as, we can sort of understand what's driving them, we don't have to agree with it in any way. I love writing characters like this. Like I love writing, I wrote Lucifer for 2 years.
Mm.
And that was literally the devil as protagonist. So, once you've done that, write another sort of less savory characters is kind of a walk in the park. But I love writing villains as leads. It's always the most fun.
Is is Destro? Because once you're talking about Lucifer, we're talking about obviously evil. Is Destro
Mm.
evil? Is he just immoral? Is he sociopathic? Like, how would you define him?
I mean, I would kind of hesitate to sort of put too much of a label on it. He's definitely a bad man who does bad things. His moral compass is extremely askew. Um, that's what makes him fun.
Now, one of the fundamental relationships that he had in GI Joe was with the Baroness. They kind of like that romantic thing. Does that role exist in this series? Does he even know who she is, and what's her role in the series overall?
Yeah, I mean, so again, we're from the ground up. So I mean, I think it's no, it's definitely out by now. So if you go look at Duke, the Duke book that's coming out at the moment, Josh Williamson's book, um, the Baroness has a different role in this universe at this point in time. So no, that isn't something we're exploring here. That's something that I'm sure will be further down the line. But that side to Destro, where he is, really just a big old metal-headed romantic at heart, uh, but still in kind of a sinister way. That is definitely gonna shine through.
So, how
He just
much
hasn't
time?
found his one yet.
So, how much time does this series cover? Like, is it all within a small frame, or are we seeing him gradually build over a course of weeks, months, years?
It's a relatively short time frame. It's kind of in the world of international arms dealing, things move fast. So yeah, it's over a relatively short time scale, a couple of days, maybe a week. It's a power grab, really. Whether by Destro or someone else, you have to wait and see. But it's a lot of things get blown up in quite a short amount of time.
Are we talking from Cobra, GI Joe, or are there new villains that we have not met yet that are going to appear in?
Uh, that would be 10. I mean, Zammot and Tomax are the ones who are really getting under his skin in this book because they are also not yet a part of Cobra. So there's different entities sort of vying for power as the world stage is shifting, thanks to the arrival of the Transformers.
So, from Destro's perspective, which side is the greater threat? GI Joe, Cobra Commander, eventually the Transformers.
He's not. I don't think he's not even thinking in those terms yet. He's sensing that he knows Energon exists, the energy source, and uh, he has a source of that, but he doesn't know what it is yet. So this is the thing that makes him sort of go, sort of think something's changing, and he is desperate not to be left behind. He must lead the charge.
Mm.
So everyone else is secondary to him and Mars.
So you mentioned that Destro, I mean, he's doing this partly because of, you said, his family lineage. He kind of is born into this. What motivates him? I mean, if he wasn't born into this, would he still want to find himself in this position? Is he forced to do this by genetics, almost, or family line genetics, or is it kind of just like keeping the family business running?
I mean, get into a whole, philosophical nature versus nurture debate, but I think it's such a part of who he is, or it's almost the like all-consuming part of who he is. Um, so I think it would be hard to know who he'd be without this. He feels, it's the family line, and maybe if the family line had been, orthodontics, he would have just been very like very
Degrees
very
orthodontist.
determined, very very determined to just make the best pair of braces he possibly could, and less people would probably die in the process. But this is the line he's in, and uh, he's entirely driven by that.
Mm. Now, another aspect of Destro is that his backstory is always shrouded in some amount of mystery, especially how with him and all that. So, how much of his backstory will readers get in the series?
Um, it's definitely there. It's definitely, yeah, probably more than many iterations have sort of had the space to explore with him because I don't think he's ever had his own spotlight in this much detail before. Um, but I think we have a pretty good idea of who he is and where he comes from. We'll probably see a little bit more of his family history, or at least like infer um, some of it. But he's also very, very much a sort of lone wolf. Um, so he's quite isolated, and he's the last of the sort of direct line of Destros. He has cousin Darklon, who's also part of his little gang, the Iron Grenadiers, and he's in the book as well. So we'll explore a bit of that.
And he's going to be silver helmeted, not the gold helmeted, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Some reason, the toy I had was the gold helmet one. I thought that was a cool looking one.
Was that the Prophet director
Yeah.
with the leopard print? Because that's great. That's an
It-
amazing design.
that's one thing about Destro. He is one of the coolest looking characters in GI Joe. I mean, for a villain too, he's just something just cool ass about the way he looks.
He looks insane. It's fantastic.
So, I mean, obviously, this is a massive franchise. You have, like I said, GI Joe, Cobra Commander, Duke, movies coming out. How much did Hasbro editorial have a say in what you needed to do in the story?
I had a basic brief of like where things are headed because it's all building in a direction. The Angel universe is all tightly tied in. And with Josh doing both Duke and Cobra Commander, we definitely had some we had a fair bit of discussion up front about both, the starting place in terms of where Destro was left off or will be left off in those books, and sort of where things are headed, the direction things are headed. So that there was a fair bit of conversation. But the story in itself, I was very much left to go a little wild with.
Was there
Um,
anything you were told that you couldn't do?
Mainly language.
Language. I would assume Destro probably would have had a potty mouth. I mean, he has those arms deal. I doubt he was talking rainbows the entire time.
Yeah, but
How bad was the language at one point before you cleaned it all up?
yeah, it wasn't that bad. But also aware this is a certain kind of franchise. It's always an interesting balance to walk with that kind of thing. We're doing books that are based on they're based on a toy line and based on an 80s cartoon, but exploring some definitely more sort of mature topics, which I don't think is anything new either. I think Larry Hama did a lot of that. Those comics were something again that I hadn't broached before. They just weren't on my radar. And when I went back and looked at a bunch of them, they're fantastic. I can see why this franchise became what it did. So yeah, it's a line between making it feel real and keeping it sort of true to GI Joe and keeping it fun as well. You know, make sure enough things blow up.
So, what can listeners look forward to in the upcoming issues of Destro?
Um, Lots of power struggle. I think some sort of quite gothic, not maybe horror, but kind of mystery, which is a fun thing to kind of explore because he looks somewhere between the Man in the Iron Mask and Dracula, and pro wrestler. Some a lot of double crossing, a lot of sort of machinations. Destro sort of has everyone in his pocket. The whole world is kind of needs him. So when someone tries to take his throne, he hits back very, very hard.
So when does the first issue come out?
June 19th.
All right. What's next for you?
Other than Destro, I am working on Doctor Who for Titan. That launches with Free Comic Book Day, which is coming up pretty fast. And then we've got a 4-issue run following that. Creature from the Black Lagoon as well, also from Skybound, which I've co-written with Ram V. So that'll be out. The One Hand and the Six Fingers is a creator-owned project that Ram and I have also been working on. 2 books telling 2 sides of the same crime. That's coming out currently. Issue 3 of Six Fingers is out soon. I think that's everything I can talk about right now.
Well, you should come back to talk Doctor Who.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
always happy to.
I'll be glad. Mr. Waters, it's been an absolute honor to speak with you, sir. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Traverse the Stars podcast. Please help me battle the algorithms by liking and subscribing. Be sure to return for the next episode when John Paisano boards the mothership. He's the composer for the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Until next voyage, travel on.